Balance. Okay, try it.
Again. Check 1, 2, 3.
Hello, Andrew. This is Charlie at City Hall at 6:20. So I got my so everything is set up like you said. But when someone speaks into the microphone, I can't hear it through my headphones, and I'm not picking it up on the meter. So I'm a little concerned we're not going to get any audio. So right now you've got it. Both channel 1 and channel 2 are on interior. So I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure how you got this set up because I'm trying to do my shotgun off of channel 2, but it didn't seem to respond, so I'm going to try calling Alex. Thank you. Hi, so I'm a little nervous here. So Andrew has everything set up on internal microphones for both channel 1 and channel 2 on the camera. Okay, so that was my question.
Want it? We want to avoid people. If you can announce that there's an end of the question. Yeah, before we get started, and then we'll show the thing. Oh no! There's a lot of public opinion.
Hi, good evening. We're going to get started pretty soon. Just want to let everybody know that there is an agenda at the front desk, and we're also passing those around. And there's also questionnaires to capture your feedback from this evening, and we can collect the questionnaire, and we'll talk more about that this evening. Thanks.
Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out how I can talk I'm Tom Visser.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Good.
Yeah.
We haven't had the pleasure.
Yeah. No, this is great. This is great.
Podium.
I just wanted to do something. I don't know.
Would it be better for us to pass around this
Signed in because it looked pretty short. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. You get help? Yeah, absolutely.
It's just back here.
Oh, yeah, sure.
actually next to the projector because I've got a short leash.
Sure, sure.
So I've got to try to. What's the mic there? It's up.
Just the mic I'm going to use.
Sure. You Alan?
Yes.
Hi, Chris Trombley.
Chris.
Hey, pleasure to meet you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to move the podium here?
He wanted up close, so we can move the mic closer, or when he's done, we can move it back here, whichever.
Well, I can do it right there.
Yeah.
You want to just move the mic?
Looks like folks are still coming in. It would be okay if we move the mic. They want to use the podium, and he's got a little bit of a leash here.
Oh, sure.
Is that as far as it goes? Well, I think
That's
we
as
hit
far
a.
as that goes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to help out Jim.
Just goes out. Everything goes out.
They have.
Just swing the mic.
Yeah, like, good. So we're going to get started in a few more minutes. Thank you for your patience. If you haven't already, there's an attendance sign-in sheet, also agenda and questionnaire. If you have not received that, there's available at the front desk. Thank you.
We've got cables in all directions. I think that's the idea here. But I mean, do we have any extra? We've got some slack.
How will this work? How's this?
Very nice.
I had him here, and that's it. He was at our awards.
Oh, excellent.
So he's your timekeeper, and he's got the cards. I don't know, there's a 2-minute and a
Try this, and we can use the.
All right, good evening and welcome. If everyone could take their seats. I understand that there's been some requests for louder sound. If this is sounding okay, sounds good in the back. Thank you. So the purpose of this evening is the MPAs, which were formed 35 years ago. The whole purpose of the MPAs is so that the community can provide feedback to the city from the ground up. And the purpose of this meeting this evening is so that we can share that feedback, and there's been a buzz in the town about Memorial Auditorium, and so this is just an opportunity for us to get together, share that feedback, positive, negative, speak out ideas. So before we start for this evening, we'll cover some ground rules. There is a questionnaire that we're asking so we can capture everyone's feedback, and we'll collect those at the end, and we'll provide the results for what everyone's feedback is. We'll do a video tour of Memorial Auditorium, so a very educational video which kind of gives us a good idea of the current condition of the building. A brief history of Memorial from Mr. Visser, overview of the building from Mr. Abair, and then we'll open it up to a town hall style open forum. So without further ado, let's talk about the introduction, ground rules, and questionnaires. So big room, a lot of people here. Is this sounding okay? Thank you. So respect the agenda and the process. Listen to others when speaking. Share your opinion politely. Treat people respectfully. Use the microphone so that everyone can hear you. We have CCTV here, and we're also broadcasting on Facebook Live. Respect the timekeeper who will warn if time limit is approaching. So Adrian, thank you for volunteering, has a couple signs. So if you see the yellow, that means you're approaching on your time. You have 30 seconds left. And then when you see the orange sign, we asked you could wrap it up so we can move it on. We're limiting conversation to 2 minutes so everyone can get a turn, and then if we have time available at the end, we'll allow people to come back a second time. But the whole idea this evening is just to start a forum and get everybody's conversation. So I think that's it. So we will start with our video tour with the visit for Memorial Auditorium. Mic here.
Welcome to Memorial Auditorium. Come on in. We'll go look at the plaques in the front lobby. So we have all of these plaques, all different World War veterans. So right there you have all of World War. Over here you have Korean, and you have World War II. So here we have the women of World War I, which is really quite neat. So I'm not quite sure who it was, but there was an interest in this gentleman, and I don't, Howard Plant. And so his name is there, and I know that the Veterans House or Lodge is named after him, and so they were looking for the plaque that was related to Howard Plant.
This is so moving to see all of the names from World War I.
And it's very interesting that the majority was World War I. So you have this whole wall is World War I. You have 3 plaques for World War II and 1 for the Korean War.
I was thinking about that. Do you know what that is? Did Vermont just get less involved in World War II somehow, or?
It is interesting that World War I had so many memorialized. I know my dad was in the Korean War, and I don't think that people spoke of the Korean War in the same way, either World War I or World War II. But to have just 2 plaques for World War II is kind of interesting. And I don't know whether there was a benefactor who took it on themselves to do all of these plaques, and therefore World War I was more memorialized than the rest. Your general lobby, and here are your old lobby ticket booths from days of old, which are pretty cool. The old phone booth. Back in the days when there were really paid phones.
There hasn't been a phone in here for a while. There is some coin, but
And I find it fascinating that they put mirrors on the doors, so you have your reflection rather than looking into your own.
oh wow. We're getting a lot more of me on camera than we usually get.
All right.
I guess it could connect like this door we got to the steeple.
And you have your ladies' rooms down here, and then it goes down to where generator space used to be. I thought we'd stick to each floor and make our way up.
Yeah, sounds good.
And then I'll take you to the basement where the boilers are. My favorite spot. So I think that there is one semi-pro ball. I think the Frosties might have been here one year. But this was used for pickup basketball, high school basketball for years. And then there were all the be done by union. The sprinkler system is still working, and it is up to code. It is still being maintained. It is what's called a wet system, so you have a dry and a wet sprinkler system. And this is a wet system, so you have to keep the building heated in order that your wet system doesn't freeze.
What do they call it?
The balcony. Yeah, the wood ceiling above.
Is it possible that we might get up there later on?
I do not have a key to the roof, so that's a hatch, and it's a little more difficult to get to. But
Okay, that's good.
it was just replaced 2 years ago. On the left is the dressing rooms from the years of the Memorial Auditorium.
This is great.
So, prep space, and it was both the male and female sides. This was the men's side, and the women's side here.
Are the lights still working?
Yes, actually. 1977.
So we're just, walking across the street, not yet afraid of cars.
No. So there is one more floor up, which is actually a really beautiful floor. They used it most recently, they had yoga classes up here. I have no idea what it got used for previously, but sort of my own, I love this space.
How many years were that?
special in its own way. And Memorial has a beautiful history to it. It has a lot of character. It's just very tired. And it has a lot of masonry work that needs to be done on it. And the masonry is, the roof has leaked multiple times. When the roof leaked, the water went into the masonry, and there are steel pylons that run vertically in the brick walls. And so the water's run down into the pylons and rusted them. And in fact, I'll take you outside and you can see the rust has pressure on it. And it's actually cracked the bricks. So what we don't know is what the status of those steel beams interior are. And so in order to know the stability of the building, we would have to take all the brick off, clean the steel, repair the steel, and then put it back on. And that price tag alone is around $4 to $5 million. And that would just be determining what the status is and fixing it, unless the pylons actually are rusted any more than we know. And so that is one of the largest items that is sitting out there. And then you do have your heating system that needs to be replaced. And depending on what you want to use the space for, a different heating system would be put in. And in 1928, they didn't have a lot of ventilation either. So there is some ventilation, but really what it is it's fans that open up to the roof. And so all it does is blow air in, which on a day like today is not going to do a lot. Or in winter, it's going to blow a lot of cold air in here. So it doesn't have a good system, mechanical system for taking care of the building at this point. The windows are original for the most part. Some have been replaced, but they are also failing and have issues, and they would have to be replaced. So there are a number of large items that would have to be replaced, and you would want to add an elevator if you were to do something in this building as well. And that would cost quite a bit of money to find, number one, a location to put an elevator that wouldn't interfere with everything, and then would be accommodating of the people and the use of it. So I can actually show you the brick. I think that's a nice thing to see on the exterior.
And Margaret, what do you want to see happen here?
I am open to ideas of how it could be used. I think that there are potentials. I think that the facade is an important part of it, but I think that potentially the interior is not as critical as the facade of the building. It's the architecture of it. And so it would just be nice to see someone want to use it for something that is viable. You know, it could be a multitude of different things, from condominiums to another auditorium to a retail outlet of some sort. But it is challenging being in downtown Burlington is that there's not a lot of parking right here. So it could be a number of different things, and it'd just be nice to see the space used.
And do you have a personal feeling about Memorial Auditorium?
I don't. I like the building. I like the character. But I really feel like it is up to others to determine how and where it's going to go. You know, I think that it's in a tired spot. And so that makes it more difficult. If it was 1991 and we were looking at it, it might be a very different thing. But with its history over the last 30 years, it is tired. You grew up or you aged and you changed, and I think that's the case of this building. It looks a little tired, and then it looks a little more tired, and then it's at a point where it's really expensive to fix it.
So I hope everyone enjoyed the informative video. So it kind of ends on a question mark, so kind of gives you an idea of here's the current state. So to provide a little more background on the Mr. Visser from Chair of the University of Vermont's Department of Historic Preservation will do another short presentation, kind of talk about how we got here, and turn over to you, sir. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Yeah, I'm the director of the graduate program in historic preservation at the University of Vermont. And just for a little bit of background, our students did a project last year at this time looking at some of Burlington's historic landmarks from the 1920s. And indeed, it was during that project that one of our students, Emma Haggerty, who unfortunately has to work tonight, did the research on the background history of how Memorial Auditorium came to be. And it's wonderful that actually there are copies of Emma's research that you may have seen coming in. There are more copies out on the table there, and it's also available online. So if you just do a web search for 1920s Burlington landmarks or something like that, I'm sure you'll find it. This has been done over the years in this introductory historic preservation course that I teach, looking at various historic resources in Vermont, but especially in Burlington. For our students who are coming here from all over the country, Burlington is an amazing place to study historic preservation. We have such access here. It's really a treat for them to be able to take advantage of the resources that we have. So with that in mind, what I would like to do tonight is to pick up the story a bit from Emma's background research and talk about Memorial Auditorium's place in Burlington's civic story. In 1925, according to the Burlington Free Press, the editor had called for a new separate Memorial Auditorium with tablets on the wall in the main lobby. This was a time when there were plans already underway to build a new city hall on Church Street. In 1926, the mayor's office presented plans for a new city hall on Church Street with a 1,000-seat auditorium, but citizens complained that the city should build something with a much larger auditorium and indeed do it in a separate building rather than to try to squeeze it into this very building that we're standing in today. So in 1926, in February, a new plan for a new city hall was revealed. It is this building, designed by the famous architectural firm of McKim, Mead & White, and at the same time, there were also plans discussed for a new Memorial Auditorium to be built on the corner of Main Street and South Union Street with a capacity of 4,000 people, and that was brought to the voters of Burlington in March of 1926. The voters approved the construction of the new Memorial Auditorium, and the architect was a Burlington native, Frank Austin. Austin also designed the central fire station and the junior high school, Burlington Junior High School, all within a few years of the construction of Memorial Auditorium. So in April of 1926, ground was broken on the corner of Main Street and South Union Street for the new Memorial Auditorium. By the time December came along, however, it became apparent that more money would be needed. Isn't that always the way? So it had to have a special citywide meeting. The voters approved additional funds to continue the construction. In April, yet another bond was passed for $100,000 in 1927 money to continue with the construction of a Memorial Auditorium. By December of 1927, the roof was done and the building was enclosed. And on March 28, 1928, Memorial Auditorium had its grand opening event, which was attended by a crowd of over 3,000 people. At that opening, there was a statement by Burlington Mayor Clarence Beecher, who said, "If the people will insist that Memorial Auditorium be kept always at its best, it will ever be a real tribute to those living and dead who served their country well. If our citizens will use the building as their own and make it serve the needs of our community, the state, and even the nation, it will long be a blessing to Burlington." So, Memorial Auditorium opened with a lot of events, and I'm just going to run through a sampling of these events. Mainly, these are from clippings and so on from the Burlington Free Press. April 9th, everybody was invited to the Elks Charity Ball. On the 15th of April, 1,700 people heard the first performance of the Burlington Symphony Orchestra in Memorial Auditorium. 4 days later, 2,000 people attended the Burlington Firemen's Ball. The next day, there was a four-bout boxing match in the basement of Memorial Auditorium. And then 4 days after that, there was dancing with Mark Bergman's Real Hot Band, according to the Free Press. Okay, May 2nd, 1928, the American Legion held their anniversary ball there. The next day, Tony Sarge had his world-famous marionette show for children of the city. On the 5th of May, over 1,000 people attended the Vermont Republican Party caucus. On the 7th of May, 1928, the 7th Field Artillery Military Band and a choir of over 100 sang at Memorial Auditorium. On the 11th, Peter W. Collins, a famous lecturer from Boston, came to speak. Over 800 people attended that. The 12th, 7 Vermont school orchestras competed for prizes. The 13th, Burlington Symphony Orchestra had a concert. The Vermont Democratic Party had their state convention on the 15th. The Burlington High School Orchestra and Band had a concert on the 17th. The 18th, the Vermont Republican Party had their state convention in a Memorial Auditorium. And that very same night, UVM held its junior prom in the building. Talk about a busy schedule, okay? So we're not going to go night by night for, ever since then. So let me just pick up a few more highlights that came up. 1929, the Burlington Automobile Show was advertised as being the biggest show north of Boston. Okay, the Vermont Sportsman Show was showing all sorts of sporting dogs and other events in 1931. Farm Bureau had its annual banquet here in 36. There was a Halloween celebration here on October 30th, 1937 that was preceded by a grand parade up Main Street with people, especially the kids, in their Halloween costumes. If that doesn't bring a community together, I don't know what. A basketball tournament, 1938. And then Rudy Valley, Vermont's own Rudy Valley from Newport, Vermont, gave a performance here with his orchestra in 1939. And it continues. Tom Dewey, the GOP presidential candidate, spoke in Memorial Auditorium in 1940. Dorothy Thompson, another famous speaker, attracted over 2,000 to the auditorium. We had Education Association conventions, a circus for children, especially during the early war effort to help the British at the start of the Second World War. By the 1950s, the basement area that we were just looking at in the video had been converted into offices for the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service. In 1955, the State Teachers Convention had their annual convention here. 1962, the Burlington Welfare Department used Memorial Auditorium to distribute food to the city's needy people. Simon and Garfunkel performed here in 1967. Senator Barry Goldwater gave a speech here in 1964. And in 1968, $5,000 was invested in Memorial Auditorium by the Lane series to improve the acoustics for concerts there. And then in 1986, 242 Main was opened with an art exhibit, 2 rock bands, and about 200 teenagers attended that opening night. And the shows go on, and and Alan Abair is going to be filling us in more on some of the history during the 80s and 90s. That's where my memory kicks in the early 80s of going to events there, and I'm sure many of you in this room also have fond memories of those special events, including perhaps some of these performers, lifetime memories that happened right there. 1988, Memorial Auditorium was listed on the National Register of Historic Places as a contributing building within the Main Street, College Street Historic District, which gives it certain protections. Of course, as we've just heard, and as I think we're all aware, for a number of years there have been increasing concerns about the deferred maintenance, and this really started to come to a head in 2012. And indeed, this brings us up to where we are last year when the city decided it was time to close, hopefully temporarily, Memorial Auditorium, and the variety of users in the building were asked to leave. So it's at that point that I put together this video. I guess the music's okay. So we have to thank University of Vermont Special Collections for many of those historic images from the McAllister photo collection, especially those images from the 1920s and 1930s. And with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Alan Abair, who can fill us in some more recent history of the building.
Thank you, Tom. That was very well done. Brought back a lot of memories. I want to thank Sandy Baird for inviting me here. She knows I have a long history with Memorial Auditorium. And so I'm going to start off. I think my first recollections of Memorial Auditorium will be similar to thousands and thousands of people who grew up in Burlington in the 50s and 60s. My first recollection of Memorial Auditorium was my father bringing me there. I was probably 4 or 5 years old to see my hero of the time, Roy Rogers, King of the Cowboys. He held me up in the back of the room, excuse me, and I could see Roy sitting atop his Palomino horse Trigger across the room with more people than I'd ever seen in my life. A little later on, he brought me to Golden Glove boxing matches, which was one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. When the house lights went down, the ring lights went on, and the two contestants headed to the ring. I felt something in my stomach I could never describe. It was very interesting. As I grew a little older, a friend of mine, his father was Harry LaValle, who ran the water department in Burlington in those years, and my friend Don, who later became fire chief in this town. They ran the food concession at Cathedral for the Cathedral High School basketball games. So they took me with them to Memorial Auditorium to watch basketball games in those days. In those days, Burlington High School and Cathedral High School, neither one of them had their own gymnasium, and all their home games were played on those courts. There were classic games between Burlington and Rice. Essex played there, Winooski played there, everyone played there. The biggest game was always the Burlington Cathedral game, and there the legends were born. Bunny Bazile, Mousy Holmes, Ray Houle, Ray McKenzie, all these great ball players that I looked up to as a youth on the greatest basketball court in town. The glass backboards, the shiny floor. It was beautiful. As I grew older, and since I lived in the south end of Burlington and was a little more adventurous, we headed up to Memorial Auditorium anytime there was any kind of an event going on. And we were, since we had limited funds, we had to be very creative how we got into these events. And you saw in that video there was a coal chute that led down into the basement. Well, that was one of them, I must admit. And there was cold in those days, so it was sort of a soft landing. But you had to work your way up through in the darkness into the main gym. One of my memories, early memories, was sneaking into a basketball game that involved the Harlem Globetrotters. So as the players were loading out of the bus and going up into the dressing room, I raced up the stairs and I encountered one of the largest human beings I had ever seen in my life. It turned out to be Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain at 300 pounds and 7 feet 4 inches tall. Also on that team was Bob Gibson, who had just recently defeated the Red Sox in the World Series, making a little extra money in the summertime instead of playing baseball in the winter, excuse me. So I mentioned St. Mike's UVM. That was also their home court. And one of the classic events every year, there was 2 games, since it was both their home courts. Both of the games were played at the auditorium. And the crowds assembled before the games hours ahead of time just to be able to get in. So one had to be very creative to get into those games. But there was nothing like it. The students lined up on the north side with the Kappa Sig boys on the stage end and the St. Mike's boys towards the front on the other side. And the shouting would begin long before the game started. St. Mike's boys would wait for John Trotter to arrive in his raccoon coat and start the cheering goals. And there were classic battles. There were Clyde Lord, Charlie Isles for UVM, Tony Nicodemo, Hank Grytkowski for St. Michael's College, the Polish Falcons, nationally ranked college team. Very, very exciting moments. But time goes on, off to UVM. And when I went to UVM, it was in the days that preceded the Patrick Gymnasium, and so Cakewalk was held at the Memorial Auditorium. And there was, in Memorial Auditorium, if anybody who's played basketball there knows it's one of the finest basketball courts. It's so resilient. And watching those boys dance down in pairs in their silk costumes to Dr. Lechner's version of Cotton Babes was classic. You mentioned some of the concerts that you mentioned, Tom. I was at the Peter, Paul, and Mary in those college days. My most unforgettable show during that period was for the Lane series shows. There was many, but Harry Belafonte was there. And you can love a man's records and think he's the greatest, but until you see him live, you don't understand. Live music is what the auditorium was all about. In the early 1970s, I began a career as a promoter. And this could not have happened unless I had a facility of 25,000 seats that I could rent for my enterprise. And all the booking of the auditorium at that time was handled by Ray Contois, the gentleman who this room is named after. And he was very fond of Memorial Auditorium. He made it very clear to me that if I was going to do anything there, that I better do it right. He toured the building regularly and annually with the editor of the Burlington Free Press, and they would report to the city on the condition of the building each year, and it was always in excellent shape. My first promotion at Memorial Auditorium was quite a unique thing. It was the Muhammad Ali-Joe Frazier fight. And they had booked the fight. They had guaranteed both of the contestants $1 million each, and they were going to make their money by closed-circuit television broadcast, which was relatively a new phenomenon in those days. It was transmitted through telephone lines around the country to various locations. Ticket prices were $25 each, which was virtually unheard of in those days. And the technology, to say the least, was very shaky. The telephone company, fortunately, happened to be located right across the street from Memorial Auditorium, so in order to get the feed into the auditorium, a cable was dragged across the street through the upstairs window and down onto the main floor of the building. The crowd arrived long before the event began, and people were looking at the size of the screen. And the sound was bad, and there was grumbling and people wanting their money back. And I didn't know what was going to happen. But as soon as the lights went down and the fight began, the crowd was screaming as if they were at Madison Square Garden that night. And everybody left happy. During those were the years that concerts began. The concert activity in Burlington started to creep up. We were located in a very convenient location between Montreal and Boston, so we could get the top touring attractions to come through here. And it proved to be a very lucrative market with the college students and the young people that worked in Burlington and the new interest in rock music. There were some rough times at first, but when the systems were bogged down, the concerts started rolling in, and they didn't really stop after that. That was the beginning of big-time rock and roll shows. Bruce Springsteen was one of the first that came in, and that was an unbelievable event for all the people here. In the early 1990s, or the 1980s, Bernie Sanders was elected mayor of Burlington. I was one of the members of his Arts Council, and his commitment was to improve the arts community in Burlington. One of the underused facilities at that time was Memorial Auditorium, was identified as such. So the city put together an RFP to seek management, professional management for the building. I and a group of local people signed on, and our proposal was selected, and we took over management of Burlington Memorial Auditorium in 1983. Our mission was twofold. One, to increase the community use of the building as a primary thing, and secondly, to improve the commercial use of the building, to increase revenue in the building. In a matter of a few years, we increased the bookings in the building to 700 activities a year. 60% were for Burlington use, Parks and Rec, the Youth Office, the Women's Council, the CEDO Office, the Fire Department, the Police Department, the Arts Council, the Assessor's Office. Everybody used that building for something, and that was Bernie's vision. There was the men's Parks and Rec, in fact, had a great noontime basketball program for community people, which I took part in, and they had a men's league basketball team, and my team included Bernie Sanders and Bob Kiss. We weren't very good, but we had fun. We initiated a marketing campaign to increase knowledge of the building and the availability of a classy building with a cooperative staff and a lucrative market. Using my contacts in the promotion business, we brought a whole new array of shows into the arena. It wasn't uncommon during that time to have 4 major events in 1 week. We had our regular users too, the Vermont Handcrafters, the Lane Series. We had political rallies, Jesse Jackson, Geraldine Ferraro, Jerry Brown, the Golden Gloves boxing tournament, the Champlain College basketball team, which was a national championship, junior college program, the Royals Lipizzan Stallions, car shows, boat shows, fitness shows, model train shows. The Vermont City Marathon was headquarters there in its first year. Now it's history. Its success is history. We had kids shows, graduation ceremonies, Mozart Festival, Vermont Symphony, Rice Stunt Night, First Night, Jazz Festival. There's so many concerts I can't mention them all, but one comes to mind in particular when the discussion of parking comes up. We booked Kenny Rogers into Burlington, one of the most popular acts in the country at that time. But the only way we could get Kenny into Burlington was to book 2 shows. So one show was booked, I believe, at 3 o'clock, and the next one was at 6. But as traveling shows go, everything was late, and the first show didn't get off. So that didn't, and everybody had already arrived for the second show before the first show was over. So we essentially had 5,000 people parked in Burlington. So it can be done. It's not an ideal situation. I'd like to speak now of some studies that we did during that time, and it's the economic impact of events held at Memorial Auditorium and how critical they are to the economy. This has 2 aspects to it. The direct income comes from the people that are involved in the production of the show, the technicians, the stagehands, the security staff, the fire marshals, of course, the advertising revenue to radio stations and television stations and print, advanced ticket sales usually handled by the Flynn box office, ushers, backstage crews, box office crew, concession operators, and all kinds of other miscellaneous services. But also, the impact comes from restaurants in town. The restaurants would call me every month to find out what was going on at the auditorium to be sure that they didn't run out of inventory and they had enough staff on nights of the show. Bars, hotels, motels for the traveling groups, convenience stores, gas station, and also in Church Street retail stores also benefited significantly from these events. So here we are. Thanks for the memory. 2 years ago, I saw significant work being done on the roof of Memorial Auditorium, and I sensed that there was a recommitment on the part of the city to keeping the building going. Then the next thing I know, there's a sign that says, "Thanks for the memories." Can't tell you how many people have come up to me since that time, knowing my long association with the building, and said, "What is going on?" Karen Paul kindly sent me some of the information she had on the structure of the building. And essentially, nothing had been done in the 20 years that I had not been associated with the building. Everything, the only thing that was done there was as required. Nothing was done to deal with the basic needs of the structure. I have to believe that if any landlord in the city of Burlington handled their property like that, they'd be in deep trouble with code enforcement. One of the things that sort of disturbs me nowadays is the lack of real entertainment. People get their entertainment from their iPhones and their iPads, the television set. But live entertainment is the critical thing that keeps the culture alive. And Memorial Auditorium was the venture, it was the venue for that. It is our venue. It's our civic center. Challenge the city government of this town. They spent 3 decades trying to save the Moran plant, which has a fraction of the historical and cultural significance of the Memorial Auditorium. So I'm hoping that they will get behind any kind of effort to save that building. If it, one way or another, save the building. If it can't be as a performing arts center, then it is their responsibility to give us another one. Because if Burlington is going to remain the cultural center of Chittenden County, it needs a civic center. Thank you.
Tom, Alan, that was fantastic. Thank you for the historical background. And so that kind of moves us up from the onset of the building, how it came through years, some historical background on how we kind of got here today. So where we'd like to pick up the conversation is, what are your thoughts? So the purpose, again, this evening is to capture your thoughts. All opinions are welcome. We do ask that we do have some mics set up. So we'll have one here in the middle. You're more than welcome to come and use this one. We have one in the back. And the intent is so that everyone has 2 minutes. It's open to anybody who would like to speak favorably, negatively. Your opinion is welcome here. All officials are welcome. All residents are welcome. Everyone has 2 minutes. And so, again, I do want to remind Mr. Pascal here in the middle with the black shirt. Adrian, if you just hold up the warning signs here. So, 30-second warning. And then if you could wrap it up. And so with the 2 minutes, just so we can give everybody an opportunity to speak. So one thing I do want to remind, again, we are taking questionnaires, and the whole point of this is so that we can kind of share some of that feedback. So if everyone's received your questionnaire and you've completed that, Martha and Jim will be collecting those kind of as we go. If you want to just stick your arm up, they can come by, or we'll have somebody in the back where you can just drop those off. So during the conversation this evening, we'll tabulate your results, and in the final few minutes of the evening, we'll share those results for you. I do want to remind that CETO is here. This is an open meeting hosted by the MPA, so they'll be taking notes. So your feedback will be documented as part of the record for the evening. So could I have just a show of hands of those who would like to come out and speak this evening, just so we can kind of get an idea of the results here. Excellent. So let's get this started. So microphone in the back. You're welcome to come up here and use the mic, or you're free to use this mic. So whoever's brave enough to take on the first question, you are welcome to join us. So we're open this for the balance of the evening. Oh, come on. Don't be shy. Nate?
I'm Nate Orshan. I'm a resident of Burlington since 1985 and living in the South End since 1999. I have a long relationship with the Memorial Auditorium, which includes playing there a few times for first night and playing in the Battle of the Bands in 1984, where my band won. So 33 years back. It's going back a ways. Yeah, right. Some people remember. So anyway, I am very favorably disposed toward Memorial Auditorium, but you know, if the economics don't work out, I have no qualms about seeing it raised if we can do something similar after it, sort of as Alan was saying at the very end of his great presentation. And so I would just like to encourage the city to see if it can save the building, but if it can't, then let's try to put up a new one that does functionally the same stuff or even better. So that's it. Thank you.
Reach the end of my rope here. Yeah, and we can certainly set up a line so that if you want to get in queue here.
Hi. So my name is Sharon Busher, and I'm a city councilor, but I'm speaking actually as someone who grew up in Massachusetts and came here to go to the University of Vermont. I was one of those people who saw those performances. I saw Ike and Tina Turner. I saw the Supremes in Memorial Auditorium, and I was at the Simon and Garfunkel performance, and actually I got to meet them afterwards. They didn't show the dressing rooms downstairs, which were part of the whole atmosphere at Memorial. What I also remember is that there were affordable events. There were craft shows that were community-oriented. You know, the farmers market in the winter time. But there were things that brought the community together in a way that didn't really require a lot of money. So as a student, I could afford to go to those events. And as a resident, I could, and I want people, I saw it as a very important piece of bringing us together early on. And I think that's what we're lacking in society today. I really feel that very strongly. But the other piece about it is that I'm also someone who's very sad that in the United States we don't value anything old. We tear it down and build something which is much less stable and attractive. We replace, we don't preserve. And so if we were in Europe, there would be nothing to go visit because we would have removed it all and put up something new. So I'm for keeping the structure. And yes, I take responsibility because the city was a lousy landlord.
I'm David Shine. I grew up blocks from here in the 50s. Snuck in, got arrested here at Rice Stunt Night. Saw Simon and Garfunkel. This was part of my life. I really was pleased when our council members said we don't value things old. We're watching Burlington change now. And these facades that have been here for 50, 100 years, they're very, very valuable. And if we tear something like Memorial Auditorium down, we'll regret it later because we'll have none of this fine brickwork, you know, that is part of Burlington's legacy. Of course, we need a big public hall. We need a space for arts and community events. And why build another when you have this big, beautiful structure? And while we're putting money into Southern Connectors or maybe hotels, out by the airport and the skyscrapers and things like that, why not put the money that's needed to renovate Memorial Auditorium, keep the facade, make the most amazing architecture inside for community events, keep a public hall, don't privatize it, don't give it to you, sell it to UVM for a hockey rink. I mean, this is one of the reasons this meeting's going on, because of that conversation. Let's keep it, and let's keep our legacy buildings, because in 50 or 60 years, there'll be no memory of the history of Burlington architecturally, and that's an incredibly valuable thing. The comment about Europe, what would there be to visit, is completely succinct, and thank you.
Good evening. My name is Reba Porter. I've lived in Burlington since 1986. I'm here tonight not so much as someone who's invested in the actual building that we have now. The teen center that was a part of Memorial Auditorium was a very important place for me and many other kids who often felt unwelcome in a lot of places. And the teen center was a place where we could go and express ourselves without judgment, and it was a safe place, which was a port in the storm for the chaos of my adolescence as well as my friends. And I have many friends today that I developed through my connections there. And I think it's really important for the city to continue to allocate resources for that group of people. I think you can't really measure the positive effects that that had on me and the other kids that went there over the 3 decades that it was functioning. And it was more than just a booking venue for punk rock shows. I think that's really important to understand, that it was about creativity and community, like other people have mentioned tonight. And I just want to see that get lost. And I think it's something that we can make a commitment to as citizens and help the administration do that. Thank you.
We got a question in the back here. Sir.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to hear that we should save Memorial Auditorium. Sure, it'll cost a lot of money to fix it, but nothing compared to what we would have to spend to replace it. What I do wonder is about the Orange Motel. What is going on, which is now the Gray Motel. It's right next to the Memorial Auditorium. And that's kind of odd. I see it all the time. But I live right around here. I saw Springsteen. I saw Public Enemy at Memorial Auditorium. And they had the front of the stage was lined with 20 big guys, to make sure none of us jumped on stage. And the idea that we would try was hilarious. But I mean, they had guys with, fake guns and dressed like military people up there. But they did a great show, absolutely great. We should save it, we should fix it up, we should do everything that we can. And I never even saw a basketball game there, but I always saw the baskets and figured there had been some. We really should save it, and it's too bad that it got into disrepair. Thank you so much. And I look forward to to the renovation of Memorial Auditorium. Anything I can do, I will do. Thank you so much. Good night.
You're also free to use the podium here if that's easier.
Hello, everybody. My name is William Robb. I'm a longtime resident of the Old North End. It's clear to me that from the presentation and just from kind of thinking about it that Burlington does need a civic center and a community center. And we are kind of quick to tear down old buildings and put up stuff that I can guarantee you that what's built, if it's built, will not last another 100 years. We don't build that way anymore. A couple of comments. I think that you could probably make that a very economically viable space by putting in a food hub, a food incubator. You could build teaching kitchens. You could build storage that would support community food in the universities. You could extend the Intervale Food Hub into the heart of the city. I think that nothing will engage a community like a big, long shared table. So I think that might be a way forward in terms of developing a project that has economic viability and can support the community. I've seen a lot of development projects like this, and I know we're talking about numbers that seem really huge, millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, but I would bet that those numbers would be dwarfed by anything that's put forward in terms of redevelopment. I think that this thing can be done in a way that's appropriate to the scale of the city and congruent with the agricultural character of the state. I think that's about all I have to say. I won't take up any more time. Thank you.
How about back here? Oh, I'm sorry. We got one in the back here. I'm sorry.
Sure. My name is Dov Stucker. I'm a resident, a parent.
Share your opinion about how you want to move forward with this. And so we really do need to drive that from the bottom up, whichever direction you would like to go on that. So that's kind of the idea here. So more to come on that.
I'm going to follow up just to say,
sure.
Very concretely, how is the decision made and who makes it? I respect the fact that we're starting with grassroots.
The Burlington Children's Space started there. People paid on a sliding scale. That's since moved to the Old North End. So many other things to mention. The Burlington Police Department hosted Halloween parties for kids, a safe way to keep the kids safe and know that the candy was safe at a time we were all very scared of our candy not being safe. And also saw the Harlem Globetrotters there, and I remember finding the crackers in the bomb shelter and various other things. We had run of Memorial as kids, whether it was 242 Main, which was incredibly important to my youth and so many people in Burlington. I'm concerned right now that we have a lack of belief in what we can and should do for ourselves. I think we're lacking imagination as a community. We're solving our problems financially, and we're figuring out how to do things better, more fiscally responsibly. But it's costing us. It's costing us in our schools. It's costing us in our loss of our civic spaces. We have a sense that we should let it go, let business take it over, tear it down, or sell it off. We can do better. We must do better. There has to be a will to move things forward. We should be coming from a place of possibility and imagination, and we should do what it is we think we can do. So, thank you.
With the gentleman here, and then we'll move to the back.
If I may.
2002, my wife Linda and I came up to Burlington at the end of May for a job interview for her at UVM. She didn't get the job, but we still went back to where we were living, quit our jobs, moved up here without jobs because we decided we loved this place so much and it was such a good place to raise our children that we were going to take that risk. We never regretted it. A lot of what made us decide that we needed to take that risk, it went beyond the beauty of the place, you know, looking at the lake, looking at the mountains, the attractiveness of the city. It was the community life that we saw up here just in one brief weekend. And a big part of that community life was the public infrastructure, particularly for us, the beaches, but also the waterfront downtown. And I came to learn, as I have lived here, that Memorial Auditorium is an important part of that public infrastructure. And so the idea of losing that really upsets me. In fact, it appalls me. I would have to say right now I'm utterly opposed to the idea of selling that property, no matter what we do with it. That is an important part of what we have as a city, a resource for the city that's got to be maintained. But as all the statements have made clear tonight, by so many people, it serves an important civic function that goes really way beyond its beauty. But I want to add something to that, which we haven't talked about yet. It's a memorial. It's a memorial to people who gave their lives to fight for what they thought was right, particularly in World War I, and they stopped a horrible regime through their sacrifice. I don't think you tear down that kind of a memorial. I don't think you forget those people. And I think that as a community, we need to protect that value. Thank you.
When I'm done applauding. Hi, I'm Jason Baker. I'm a resident of the Old North End.
Memorial Auditorium and what's happening is not a standalone case. It's a pattern of the kind of way the city is being managed, which lets important institutions and properties fall into rack and ruin, then declares a crisis, then privatizes. It happened with Burlington College. It happened with the Burlington Town Center. It is happening with City Hall Park, and now with Memorial Auditorium. So I want that pattern recognized. The second thing I would say is that in my 14 years in Burlington, I think this is something of a historic meeting. It's the first time that the leadership of the neighborhood planning assemblies has brought people together to learn about an issue, to talk to each other about an issue, and there is nothing that can be done or not done in this city without your understanding, approval, or disapproval if you connect with your own power, and I hope tonight is the beginning of that. I'm B. Bookchin. I want to continue with what Barbara said. In these times, what we need more than anything else is community. And the most important thing that we have to do is preserve our community. And this is the beginning of what we should be doing. And what you need for community is you need the commons. And we should not allow our commons to be taken away from us. And Memorial Auditorium serves as a commons. It can be used by all kinds of people for all kinds of projects when they don't have to pay a huge rent, and there can be community projects going on of cooking and baking and food and sewing, and every other thing can happen in space like that. In fact, projects that we haven't even dreamed of yet. So I think we have to keep it and put it to that kind of use.
Hi, I'm Amy Radcliffe. I moved here in 1986, and I remember living up on South Willard Street and walking on down to shows in Memorial and then having to walk back up the hill. But anyway, what I want to talk about more is, specifically, is about architecture and history and the kind of soul that these things bring to a community. We're seeing a lot of new buildings going up, and we've got a really huge one going up in some time in the near future. Unfortunately, the styling and the materials and the architecture of today in these kinds of projects that we see around Burlington, they don't hold a candle to the old historic buildings, and they don't contribute to the soul of the city like a building like Memorial Auditorium does, or even our Champlain Mill and other buildings that have been restored over the years that, you know, are gorgeous buildings and will always create a kind of sense of character and soul when you come into an area where they exist. There's no replacing that, and this block where Memorial is often called, well, first it was called the Gateway Block and then the Welcome Block. What is more welcoming than a beautifully restored historic building? I can't think of anything. Looking at the images, the film, all I could think about was all that woodwork, all those old floors, all that beautiful material. Can you imagine what that would be like restored? It would be unbelievably beautiful, and we would have something that would be a treasure for the next 100 years. So there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the building should be restored to its full glory, and I hope that the city sees that. And I do wish the mayor was here tonight. I'm sorry that I don't see him. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Maggie Standley, and I'm a resident of Ward 3, and I own a business and run a nonprofit in the South End. I strongly believe that we should preserve Memorial Auditorium. There is value in history and the connections we all have to it. I had the chance when I was about 20 to live for a year and a half in Paris, and I had never been to Europe before and was just inspired and bowled over by the history and the beauty of the architecture. And I really appreciate the group of people that have worked so hard to put this event together, and all the NPA support. I unfortunately can't always go to all those meetings, but I also really appreciated Alan Abair's history, and it's so important that we understand where we're coming from in order to go where we want to go. And to piggyback on what Corinne said about starting with possibility. I remember when 9/11 happened, the cover of the Christian Science Monitor said, "Failure of a lack of imagination led to this." Let's plug in our imaginations. Let's get down to the numbers and cents. I would like to know what's been going on the last 20 years. Why has it deteriorated to this? I grew up all over the country. We moved about once a year, and what I want to say quickly is I went to one elementary school twice, Port Washington Elementary School on Long Island, and it has since been renovated into a multi-use historic building that's gorgeous. And when I go back there, it has such meaning for me. And last time I was there in April, I met a man outside, and he said people often come by here that have, great memories. So let's preserve it. Let's work together to do that. And thank you.
Okay, quick public service announcement. So Charles and Martha, if you could put your hands up here. So they are collecting your questionnaires, and so we can tabulate the results for this evening. If you haven't had an opportunity to turn those in, they'll be collecting those. So we'll go Tony, and then the gentleman here. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Tony Reddington. I'm actually on the steering committee for Wards 2, 3, Neighborhood Planning Assembly, and I'm really thrilled with the turnout and the efforts that are made by folks across the community to bring this about. Our NPA in Thanksgiving, and that's the St. Joseph's School. And some of us have gone to see the work of renovation and rehabilitation of that building that's taken place. The second floor with its small gymnasium, a mini gymnasium compared to what is at Memorial Auditorium. And that floor and the senior center will also be on that second floor, will be eternally leased by the Department of Public Work, the Department of Parks and Recreation and Waterfront for various activities. The bottom floor, the so-called event hall, has a brand new kitchen. The event hall is being renovated and so forth. But what we found, what's interesting about St. Joseph's School is that the total cost of purchase and renovation of that building, which some of the classrooms had only one electric outlet, so everything had to be done, a new electrical system and so forth. But that effort is costing roughly $8 million, I think $3 or $4 million for rehabilitation, and plus the purchase of the building. That $8 million came from I don't know where. It's an investment by the Champlain Housing Trust. It's a worthwhile effort. It'll be a really important addition to the old North End for our civic activity. But what this tells me is if you can find $8 million in this community and never have to go to the city council and never have to go to bond votes and never have to and work for civic space, the commons that benefits us all, that there must be a way to do the same thing for the Memorial Auditorium. Let's rehabilitate it, let's get it going, and let's find the support to do it.
Hi, my name's Andy Simon. I feel really encouraged by this gathering tonight, both because of the seeming consensus around saving Memorial Auditorium and really enlivening it, renovating it, doing the work that we need to do to just save the structure until we can get it together to turn it into what it needs to be. I mean, that seems like a basic thing. But I'm also encouraged because the NPAs did this. And I think that the NPAs a really important part of Burlington, a really neglected aspect of civic participation. And I think that this is exactly what we should be doing in the NPAs. It's not just about civic officials coming and doing their spiel for us. It's about people talking to each other and listening to each other. And I really want to thank the organizers of this event. I also want to say that, you know, I noticed this reflex here tonight of people. It happened in town meeting when I lived in Westford for a few years. People immediately go to, I moved to this town 5 generations ago. And I think that that's great. You know, I love the roots of people here, and I love to hear the stories. But I do think it's really important that people recognize that if somebody moved here last week, they have just as much right to speak. And I moved here in 1972 in a pink Ford station wagon, and I crashed the first night in Burlington in a lounge at a dorm at UVM. But I just want to say that what's important to me as we move forward is to keep Burlington wild, weird, and mysterious. We cannot do that with slick new buildings and suburbanized spaces. Just remember that.
Hi, my name is Chris Statz, and I moved here in 1985 from down the road. But and my stories about concerts include sneaking into Joan Armatrading and watching her practice, and then taking care of Natalie Maine's dog after she had her concert. Long story, but anyway, the dog died. And I guess I kind of dovetailing on what the gentleman said earlier about the whole St. Joe's School. And my experience, in addition to concerts and farmers markets and BCS and pottery studios, is just walking by this vibrant building during the day and listening and hearing the J. Caillou dancers throbbing up in the 3rd floor, dancing on a night like tonight, middle of February, and just thinking this building is breathing right now, and it's been alive because of all the things we put into it. And I was really excited when the winter farmers market came in, because it also continued to show life during the middle of the winter and a community. I'm involved in the Young Traditions Vermont program that happens in various parts of Vermont, but for a while they were housed in Memorial Auditorium, and for various reasons, unfortunately or fortunately, they went down to Shelburne. And with that, they lost a whole group of the community, of a whole huge group of kids that sort of just showed up and were part of this great musical event, and had their own musical events to contribute to it. And I just came from the Family Rooms dinner celebration out at Ethan Allen before I came here, and I was just sort of struck by the multitude of people from all over the world. And I think we should continue to think about Memorial bringing in different cultures of people and celebrating them as well. So, hope it stays.
Hi, my name is Jim Lockridge, and I've had gladness in my heart seeing so many people come here, and the comments that have been made tonight have given me a lot of cheer too. I agree with everybody essentially. I want to ask you all the favor of, if you have a smartphone before you leave tonight, please visit save242maine.com. Read the very brief petition that's there. It asks in a very sort of warm way, inclusive way, please, when Memorial is repaired or redeveloped, reinstate 242 Maine, a resource to our youth that we can't lose. It's a one-of-a-kind, historic, and very meaningful institution, and it should stay in the place it's earned a right to be. We should honor our students there. I also I want to say, we can all take a moment to reflect on our values and our aspirations. and then turn to Memorial and think to ourselves, we have the wisdom and the creativity and the resourcefulness, the resolution, and the sense of community to really show the world what this city is good for, what we can accomplish. We can make Memorial something very special and useful, a gift to our next generations, and I'd like to see that happen. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Janice Grill. This is really thrilling that this is happening and that everyone's here. I wanted to briefly speak to the extent that I can to Dove's question about decision making, and then I want to propose a resolution, which is part of the decision making process that the NPAs have historically had. So I think that it's a little vague how decisions are made. Who decides what millions go to what in the city? Of course, there are budget hearings, there are discussions at the city council. You can go and you can talk. You can say, I'd rather have, $8 million given to Memorial than to tear down the Moran plant. You could say, I'd rather have, $8 million given to, so I'm not going to go on. So there's input in that regard. The city was supposed to do an RFP about the future of Memorial. They haven't done it yet. I suppose that if they wanted to tear it down, there might be some kind of vote. I don't know. So a city councilor who's here might be able to answer that. But I believe that the decision-making should be done by us, by the people who live here. We should decide how the money's spent. And I want to remind everyone that there is an election in March for the mayor and for many city councilors. And I would, ask you to look at the records of those people who are, asking to be reelected and whether they listen to the people. So what should happen in my mind is that the MPAs, the neighborhoods, get together and they set the priorities for what's going to happen in their city and with our money. And this is what we're doing here, and it's really great. So I'm going to propose a resolution, and we can say yes to it and send that up to our city councilors. They don't have to listen to it, but they can, and here it is. It's part of a petition that is outside. It's not the whole petition, but I've shortened it. So once I propose it, I suppose we can vote on it, and I don't know how you're going to do that with time. But the resolution is that the city councilors and the mayor honor their, that the city councilors and the mayor, pledge to maintain Memorial Auditorium in perpetuity as a publicly owned community commons, and that they pledge to empower and honor an NPA-led public process to determine and ensure that the future uses of the building reflect citizen priorities. So, I don't know if you want to have a vote or how you want to deal with that, but thanks.
Do we have any other speakers this evening? Okay.
My name is David Beckett. I got here in 1960 when my father took a job at UVM. Through no initiative of my own, ended up here. I have a few memories of the way things were before they were as they are now. One of them, of the beautiful old theaters, two of which burned. If we had lost the Flint as well, we wouldn't get it back. And I'd say the same is true about Memorial Auditorium. If we lose this building, we're not going to get it back, no matter what it's replaced with. I believe it was 1964, my mother took me to see Joan Baez in Memorial Auditorium. The PA gave out. She proceeded to sing without a microphone, and you could hear a pin drop and her very clearly in that room. You'll hear people say the acoustics in Memorial are terrible. They are if you're Metallica. If you're a string quartet, or Joan Baez, or David Bromberg, or Pete Seeger, or even Chuck Berry, they're pretty good. I'd love to see this building saved, even though it will cost a great deal of money. I had, for a very brief time, a few years, a job helping a friend load the risers into the back of the room, which elevated the seats just a few inches up so the people in the back could see. I got to see some things I would not otherwise have seen I think it would be very sad if other people didn't get a chance to see some things, either on purpose or by accident, in that beautiful room.
My name is Patricia Brain. I was born at the Mary Fletcher Hospital. The Memorial Auditorium means a lot. I got to play Babe in Pajama Game on Memorial Auditorium stage. We raised money with the help of UVM students for the fire department. That stage defined me. And in recent years, I've had a chance to photograph the Vermont Traditions students doing their summer courses there, and the rock program and at 242. I've known Richard Bailey and Jim Lockridge for a long time, and they've put their heart and soul into maintaining the kind of local music that is so important to our culture. Music is the key to this building. Music is the key to life. Music is the key to your brain. Music is key to culture. For us to be able to stand here tonight and talk to each other about the meaning of the Memorial Auditorium, it's through the music and culture. And Alan, thank you so much for your wonderful work all these years. And thank you to Tom. I'm enrolled in his historic preservation class. If you want to get the Memorial Auditorium back on board, come on up to the UVM. And anyway, thank you everybody for being here, and let's use our imaginations and resolve, and let's make this happen, because I agree with everybody here.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I did not move here in 1986 or before that time. I was born in 1986, but I kind of want to reiterate something that was kind of said before, that I'm very into the history of the building, but I see more the future, and kind of wanting to reiterate that, like, we have the teen center and everything that can happen in the future. I'm a former director of tourism for the Chamber of Commerce, and the amount of business that we had to turn away from people looking to have a large event in downtown Burlington was preposterous to me. It was baffling that we didn't have one, and we need it. As a business owner downtown, also I've been looking for an event venue directly downtown to house more than 1,000 people. Doesn't exist unless you want to be seated or you want to go private to a hotel or UVM. So I would like to see the future of the building preserved, but just knowing that we need to focus on it. And I think that anything with tearing down the building would, if any recent experience with the Moran plant would just delay the future of the building. So I think we should make a commitment to preserve it now and get going.
So looking at the agenda, it's 8:17. We had left the forum open until 8:25. Is anybody else who'd like to come up and join us? Yes, we do.
I fortunately came here 10 years ago, and I recall the first night, which was about a couple months after I got here. And first night, first of all, was incredible for a small city like this. But what really impressed me was going into Memorial Hall and a circus being performed right there in that huge room. And I was so impressed. I thought, this in a small city like this? I had no idea of all the treasures in this place. as someone else said, sure, the mountains, the lake, the beauty here, but what we have, what our real merit is as people, what we've done is to have places like Memorial Hall. And I can't imagine anybody doing anything other than restoring it back to its initial glory. Also, while I'm here, I'm so glad to see everyone here from their NPAs. And I hope this is just the start of taking back our voice here in Burlington. We have lost it. Let's get it back.
All right, we're getting close to the last call for alcohol. Any other speakers for this evening? Yep, sir.
Hello, my name's Ibnar. I've done a bit of work putting parts together for a sailing vessel called the Vermont Sail Freight, the Ceres, that went down to New York City delivering food products that were local food. Did the wooden parts for this ship, and I made these parts with a lot of help from craftspeople in the South End, in public buildings, 339 Pine Street, several shops down there, metalworking, woodworking, people that helped me learn how to use the lathe, boring holes into the pulleys that I made for this vessel. And it was an amazing collaboration to get the parts and put together by hand and with other artisans and tradespeople. And I bring this up because that's also a public building that is used creatively, but the space in that building is limited. Since my time learning boat building skills, I'm also an artist. I have a studio in the South End. I like that this is my third time living in the city. I hope to stay this time, trying to make it work. It's very expensive to live in the city. But I do feel like I have my glasses on because I was going to read something here. I made a note that I and many of you probably also have creative ideas. I've heard several now. And one of them is I'd love to have space, at least for a little while, to make rowboats, wooden rowboats. They're actually quite easy to make, depending on your style of making them. But I would love to be able to get out on the lake easier than paying for a membership at the boat club if I can't afford it or others can't afford it. But we could churn out rowboats with students through youth build. Anyway, that's just a creative idea of using the space maybe for a season to try to do something. That's when you go down to the waterfront, you don't have to pay for it. You can just get in a rowboat and enjoy the lake. So just a creative idea, and I love the food hub ideas too.
Last call. Sir.
My name is Larry Davis. My wife Katie and I own the Willard Street Inn, which is a little over 135 years old. We've had a long time interest in historic preservation. What I wanted to say here is Jim Lockridge at tourism meetings and everything piqued my interest in Memorial Auditorium. I've been there for farmers market and everything. Quick summary, this meeting and you folks have given me hope and enthusiasm that this can happen. We've been here for 12 years. Prior to being an innkeeper, my whole career was in marketing, unique selling propositions. The part that tells me, it feeds my hope and enthusiasm, there is a story. You got me excited about it. But I think with the interest in retro and music and all these iconic names, I think we can grab a hold of today's 20-somethings and maybe even younger through 242 and everything to get them behind. A lot of us lived this stuff, 60s and 70s, but there's that little nugget that I think we can get them interested in, and it can become a cross-age support from young to the boomers, of which I'm one, and really make this thing happen. So yay, audience here. Terrific. Thank you.
Ma'am, anybody else that would like to do this before we do have a point of business that we want to resolve. So anybody else would like to? All right, you're the last speaker of the night.
Hi. Hi, my name is Monique, real quickie. I want to, again, thank you so much for all the enthusiasm for tonight. I just wanted to raise one other possible suggestion. When we're faced with the cost of renovation, I think this might be a good opportunity when we talk about young people, not just for entertainment and places to go, but young people and also a lot of our recent immigrant community, I think, could benefit from job training in helping with the restoration. I think we should be reaching out to our area vocational schools and seeing if they might partner with us. I think this would be a great opportunity to, even strengthen even more the symbol of Memorial Auditorium as a cohesive way to bring community together.
Okay, thank you.
Within the NPAs, NPAs have the authority to do advisory motion to City Council and to Mayor. So what we will do is we will ask Janice to come back, read her motion. We'll look for a second, offer an opportunity for a brief discussion as the time is nearing the end, but certainly have the discussion, and then we will do a voice vote, and if it's really hard to tell the room, then we'll do a hand vote. Okay? With that, Janice, if you want to come back up.
Thank you. Sorry for confusing things. Okay, so I would like to make a motion to resolve that we resolve that the City Council and the Mayor of Burlington, Vermont pledge to maintain Memorial Auditorium in perpetuity as a publicly owned community commons, and pledge to empower and honor an NPA-led public process to determine and ensure that the future uses of the building reflect citizen priorities.
Okay, so open for discussion. Wow. All right. No discussion. There's been plenty of great discussion tonight. So, go ahead. Well, to be clear, our resolutions are advisory in nature, so we're able to be as strong language as you like. They will deal with it as they will. But
so what if we just say we advise the mayor and city council to maintain the building in perpetuity, et cetera, et cetera. We advise them to empower and honor an NPA-led public process. Just skip that whole pledge thing. So.
Yep. Before we proceed, we have two questions, Nate and then Adrian.
I do see where you're saying. I think that what the process would be is that we would take the language of the resolution and bring that to each of the 8 NPAs throughout the city, and they would do whatever they need to do to finesse their flavor for your own neighborhood. So then that's the channel it would have to go through, because we as a group, I can tell you that NPAs, each NPA is autonomous in its bylaws and the way that it works. So it would be very difficult for us to formally say that this room has decided this. What we're expressing is, what does this room feel? And the other common element in the NPAs is that resolutions are passed by a quorum of all present. So that allows you to say, we as a quorum say that, but it would then go to, the pathway would be through each of the NPAs. You would then go to your particular NPA, have that discussion. City Council would get as many as 8 resolutions.
Okay. Adrian?
Yeah. So fair enough, and some do, some do not, and that is the autonomous nature of NPAs. And I will tell you that one of the things that was really important to preserve, in terms of preserving the integrity of NPAs, was to not presume an outcome. We wanted to say, we're creating a space, as Bernie and Clan decided 35 years ago, a space for people to make their voice known. And so we didn't plan a resolution. If the room decides we want to do a resolution, we're open to that. But that is why we didn't put anything on the schedule, because we just didn't want to do that.
I understand your point, but to me, it's extremely important that the process is led by the NPA. I think that's almost more important than the outcome. The more important thing to me is that the people make the decision and that it's not railroaded by anybody. So I really understand your point, and I understand that you support both of them, but I think I prefer to keep them together.
So we do have a question. Before getting up to the mic, we do have to recognize you before there was a question that was raised. Somebody did have a question?
I just want to echo your point because I do believe that they are separate issues, and I think that they should be voted on separately.
So I'm going to take my moderator hat off and speak as a committee here. I would like to echo that this wasn't on the agenda, so we weren't prepared for this. So I'm not sure that this is the forum that we should conduct this vote. So if we seem unprepared, it's because this wasn't prepared. So we welcome this conversation, and I do turn it back to Jim and recognize Jim as far as whether this is falling to the bylaws. Thank you.
I'm happy to split the question if that's what people want to do.
Okay to split the question? You're going to have to.
Okay, so the first one is a motion to advise the City Council and the Mayor of Burlington to maintain Memorial Auditorium in perpetuity as a publicly owned community commons. Second?
Well, we'll do one at a time. So,
Yep. So putting my moderator hat back on, we do have another comment here. Thank you.
Hello. Well, I don't really like to public speak that much, but I think maybe we ought to, can you hear me? You can't hear me? Okay, I'm trying. All right, maybe we ought to, if we're rushing it, maybe we ought to just not rush it, you know? So then maybe it'd be a little bit, it might go a little bit smoother, you know, and rather than going all, you know, that's just a comment. So.
okay, other comments?
Before we conclude, if you haven't turned in your questionnaire, please do so we can print out the results.
There was a comment, but that isn't a decision. So I want to give, because there was for the process, let's go through the process, vote, don't vote. But I think that since we're started that flow, is there any other discussion before we're ready to take the first one, take a vote? Oh, we're not ready. We have to close discussion. If there's no more discussion,
reiterate what the original was and what the proposed change is.
Well, we've decided to split the two questions. There'll be two votes. So the one vote is the question about preserving the building as a community, publicly owned community commons. That's the first question. That's one vote. The second one is about empowering and honoring an NPA-led public process to determine and ensure that future uses of the building reflect citizen priorities. You'll get a chance to vote on both of those. So I think what we're doing now is voting on the first one, which I will read again. A motion to advise the City Council and the Mayor of Burlington, Vermont to maintain Memorial Auditorium in perpetuity as a publicly owned community commons.
call the question.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Anyone abstaining from this vote, please indicate now. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Perfect. Great.
Okay, so we do the next one? Okay, so the second one, I motion to advise the City Council and Mayor of Burlington, Vermont to empower and honor an NPA-led public process to determine and ensure that the future uses of Memorial Auditorium reflect citizen priorities.
Any discussion? Going once? Call the question? Okay, so all those in favor, oh, you have discussion?
Oh, yeah. I like that. So we need to just make that clear, I guess. So let's just say, motion to advise the City Council and Mayor to empower and honor. I think it's the same thing, because we're not saying, I don't really know. I mean, how did you want to say it? I'm sorry, but Amy?
Yes.
It goes back to the NPAs. This is just a forum of this group of people that agree that we
That's right. That's how we can say it. We say
Mr. Charles Simpson's going to share the results of the questionnaires that I've been talking about so fondly of this evening. If you'd like to hear those results, Mr. Simpson. Charles, the floor is yours.
Hi, let me give you the results of the questionnaire. We had actually a few things are coming in, and actually some of the MPAs had their own surveys, so this is not totally complete, but we'll have to process it. But I've counted up now 62, and of course we won't be able to say too much about the other ideas, but some of them were several pages long. The most important question was, who won the Muhammad Ali Joe Frazier fight? Nobody seems to know that. So I'll skip then to question 2, which is, would you support the city obtaining funding from various sources to restore, renovate, and maintain Memorial Auditorium for civic and cultural uses? No, 9, yes, 52, and 1 probably. Question 3 was, would you support the city tearing down Memorial Auditorium and building a new civic auditorium on the same site for public uses? There was 3 maybes. There were 8 yeses and there were 49 noes. Number 4 was, would you support the city selling the Memorial Auditorium property to other entities, such as UVM or private developers? Answers, yes for 3. 3 people said yes. 57 people said no.